what I've done is I've gone and collected some things that other people have written, and I'm going to quote them and then throw it out for comments, if that's okay. The first thing that I have here is from, I don't know if anybody's familiar with who David Simon is. David Simon is the creative force behind HBO's The Wire series, which is very popular. He's also working on a similar series for HBO in New Orleans called The Treme, which should be out soon. David also, many of you may know, is in his second life. He was a professional journalist for years for the Baltimore Sun. And he recently wrote in the Washington Post about his experiences there and about the state of journalism today. And I'd like to just start us off with a little quote from what he wrote in the Post, and then we'll ask you guys to talk about it. This is David Simon. I understand the economic pressures on newspapers. At this point, along with the rest of the wood pulp Luddites, I've grasped that what was on the internet wasn't merely advertising for journalism, but the journalism itself. And though I fled the profession a decade ago for the fleshpots of television, I've heard tell of the horrors of department store consolidation and the decline of advertising, of Craigslist and Google and Yahoo. I understand the vagaries of Wall Street, the fealty to media chain stockholders, the primacy of the price per share. What I don't understand is this. Isn't the news itself still valuable to anyone? In any format, through any medium, isn't an understanding of the events of the day still a saleable commodity? Or were we kidding ourselves? Was a newspaper a viable entity only so long as it had classifieds, comics, and the latest sports scores? By that premise, what all of us pretend to regard as a viable commodity, indeed as the source of all that was purposeful and heroic, was in fact an intellectual vanity. So, what is David saying here? What is it that journalists do, in you guys' professional opinion? Is it finding and delineating the truth or what's going on in the world for your audience? Or is it more involved in selling products for your advertisers? Or is this what he calls an intellectual vanity and getting to that point?
Well, I can just start by saying with us, it's certainly not selling products for our advertisers. And I've been in our newsroom for a while and in other newsrooms, and there has never been, in any newsroom I've been in, and this probably does go on in some cities and some newsrooms, but we've never had any pressure from any boss to not do a story or to not cover something because it would affect our advertising dollars.
I don't even have Google ads on my personal blog. Not that it's going to compromise me, but I think they're ugly. As far as my work for the Gambit goes, I think I know one person in the sales department, and I've never been told that I can't put anything on the Gambit blog, and I'm not an employee there. They've just kind of given me the keys and said go, but nobody's ever told me I can't do anything there.
It's called double fisting for anybody that never went to college. I don't have advertising on my blog either. I don't get paid for any of it. I think that journalism is a civic responsibility, whether that means you just think about things that you read and respond to it as a voter, or whether or not you produce the information that other people read. I think it's a civic responsibility. I think it's part of life, and it's not a commodity in an economic sense at all.
Well, I would say that ads do. It's part of the newspaper business. It's part of media in general. Without ad sales, I don't get paid. Lee doesn't get paid. Kevin doesn't get paid. However, I'd agree with Kevin. I've never been told not to write a story. And I do, since, you gave us so much homework. I actually read the homework, and I agree with Moyers that journalism is an integral part of democracy. Without it, without somebody watching, business and government, you run into a lot of problems, and your government will, your democracy will end up dissolving. So I do think it's a really important part, the fourth estate. But by the same token, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said when Eric Alterman's piece points out that there are 25% fewer newspaper journalists since 1990. That's a huge decline. And where is the loss felt most?
There's a fine line with the economic impact on journalism, because as Eli said, it's a civic duty, but you have these huge businesses. We have I think a Fortune 1,000 whatever business owns our company, and there's a fine line between doing quality journalism and dedicating the necessary resources to doing quality journalism, and then also making a profit, and in a lot of cases, especially with these big organizations, satisfying your stockholders. I think we're lucky. I'm lucky, and I feel privileged to work for a station that by all means we're not perfect, but they still dedicate the resources where they give me 4 days to work on this story before it even airs, not knowing what it's going to come out with. And, for 5 or 6 weeks straight, that's all I've been doing, and that's unheard of. I think there's not many, unfortunately, there's not many TV stations that do that.
And it's been great work. You've done fantastic work.
And I'll say it now, I think Karen's here and Sarah's here and Eli's here. They did great work, and Karen and Sarah started in this. And I told Karen this. I'm just thankful Karen will still speak to me, because now she's this national star in the New York Times, and she'll still do local interviews. How about that?
I think David Simon's a great writer, but one thing he missed in that equation is journalism that is not really journalism, but really kind of is, and I would put Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert in that. The one example I'm thinking of is, do y'all know who Robert Smigel is? He does Triumph the Insult Comic Dog and the cartoons on Saturday Night Live. He did one cartoon on GE that ran on the East Coast. By the time it got to the West Coast, they cut it out of the broadcast. It's never been rebroadcast on Saturday Night Live, and if you've never seen it, go to YouTube and look for Smigel GE, and you'll probably find it, but it's amazing. It's amazing. In that 3 minutes, he does more than Katie Couric does in 30.